Hello everybody, this is Erin LaFave, and this is day 2 of the Plant Priestess Exploration. Hooray, I get to do a live. I wasn't sure I would be able to. I wasn't sure what time I would be able to, so I'm just found some time to hop on here and do the lesson live. So it's day 2, developing intuition, connecting to intuition, and I'm just going to light some of my incense here. I have this really nice incense that a friend of mine made she lives in Washington, and so she has really different plants out there that maybe I don't have, and so she made this wonderful incense. It's a little bit difficult to get going just because it's a loose incense, but a piece of charcoal would help if I had a little piece of that charcoal that you can use just for incense. Not the charcoal used for like grilling or anything like that. That's not the kind of use. It's just a little round one. You can start the charcoal, it gets really hot, and then you put the incense on it and it smokes. But just get a little bit so I can smell it and kind of set my mood here, because it smells very grounding and earthy. So it's really delightful. There's a little bit of white sage that I have in there. So I have some new plants hanging up here too. I have some freshly cut white sage and some black-eyed Susans that are just super pretty. And then I have some red raspberry leaf right here too. So that's medicinal. All right, so developing intuition. Why, excuse me, why did I put developing intuition into this Plant Priestess exploration? And it's because the intuition part of learning plants, learning herbalism, was really missing for me when I was, especially in, undergraduate, graduate degree. Nobody talked about that. And actually, when I was settling on my master's thesis research idea, I used intuition. So I'll tell you quickly about it because my advisor at the time thought I was crazy. So I was in a class where we were all thinking about what our master's thesis was going to be. I had got connected with somebody at the university who was connected with Lucoutere Reservation, and she had some connections there. And she said, here's a conference. Actually, it was like a healing, it wasn't really a conference, more like a workshop, and it was using Ojibwe traditional methods to deal with death and grieving. And it was like 3 days, and they were going to do a sweat lodge and stuff. She said, take a look at this. Maybe you need to, travel up north and go to it. And I thought, this is it. I got to go to this because this is where it's at. I knew that I wanted to do something that had to deal with people, using research methods that could assist something with people and plants together, an ethnobotany component. So I tell my advisor, I say, I'm going to go to this thing up north and on the Lucoutere Reservation, and learn about traditional methods for grieving, Native American Indian traditional techniques to deal with death and dying and grieving. And he was just like, how does that even fit with plants? And I said, I don't know, I have a really good feeling about this. I really feel like this is where I'm going to finally connect with plants and my thesis and the research and connection with people. And he just laughed, and he's just like, okay, I guess you got a good feeling about it. And the interesting thing was I did go, and I did see that they were using 4 main plants that were their 4 main spiritual plants, healing plants that they use. And then one of them was being talked about as hard to get and not very easily readable as it used to be. And I was like, yeah, that's the one I have to focus on. And it was white cedar, Thuya occidentalis. So I did some research on white cedar and looked at the traditional use of it and did some interviews with some Lucoutere people, or Lucoutere residents who were living right on the reservation or living near it or grew up on it and things like that. So my intuition really helped me then, because I really found a really good research thesis that I loved and that I could stick with and everything like that. But, I have been laughed at it about it, so I don't talk about it too much. And you can think of intuition as like the gut feeling. Sometimes people just say, it's just a very informed decision based on lots of life experience, being able to read people's expressions, the room, everything, just all the energy about it. So intuition can be described, in many different ways. And it's not necessarily just about getting like a message from spirits or being able to read the future. It's about being able to connect with energies that aren't visible to our human eyes, about making decisions based on our comfort level. And it could even be connection with spirits, with ancestors, plant allies. Divas is another way to talk about plant spirits. Plants communicate. They don't necessarily communicate by like verbals or anything like that. There's all sorts of different energy and chemical exchanges that happen that humans, especially in our Western society here in the United States, really are, I think, have lost and need to reconnect with again. So there's other ways of knowing, other ways of communicating with the world around us, and intuition is part of that. All right. So I did upload day 2 handouts in the Facebook group. I will send them out through email as well. And on those handouts, again, I put the Plant Priestess poster in there, so I want to make sure everybody has that. There's also a little journaling page asking about what is your memories with intuition for yourself, or if somebody used intuition with you. Sometimes people who do massage or Reiki, tarot card readers, palm readers, tea leaf readers, there's all sorts of ways to develop intuition or have people use intuition on yourself. So just maybe journal a little bit about that and get some of those thoughts out. And because some people say, I don't have any intuition, I have terrible intuition, I have no gut feeling. And I think if you really thought about it, you probably do. And it might be kind of like a spectrum, like really, really weak intuition in terms of it seems so natural, to having intuition where you can actually tap into it and use it and help other people with it. So maybe think of a spectrum, or maybe even a circle. So it's there and we use it and we just may not notice it. So just think about that gut feeling, like, I don't know about this, that feeling where you have like, I'm not sure I should do that. And some people say, well, how do I know what intuition is in relation to like my rational thoughts? Like sometimes I'm just having a lot of anxiety about something and I don't really think that's my gut feeling. I think that's just my mind trying to rationalize my way out of something. And you're right, there can be kind of a fine line. Excuse me, sneeze there. So that's we could talk on and on about how to decipher between like anxiety, your mind trying to rationalize something, and gut feeling, and intuition. I would just say that when I have intuition or gut feeling, it's like a knowing. It's like undeniable. This is what's going to happen, or this is what's happening, or this is what I should be doing right now. Sometimes it's really strong and there's no question in my mind that that's what needs to happen. Other times it is a little weaker where I'm like, I'm not sure about that. And my rational mind tries to kick in. But I would just say that try to almost experiment with your gut feelings and or intuition. I'm using gut feelings and intuition simultaneously. It's the same, synonyms. So if you have like this gut feeling about something, try to go with it, especially if it's something that's it doesn't have a big cost to it. If you have this big gut feeling or intuition that you need to leave your job today, and you don't know if your intuition's right, or you haven't connected with your intuition for a long time, that might not be the one to experiment with. But if you have like a gut feeling or intuition about let's say if you're going to an outing, you're going to a party, let's say, and if you just ever get a gut feeling like, I just really think I should stay home, maybe try to just stay home, especially if it's like a party or an outing that you didn't really tell people you were going to go to anyways. Nobody will notice really or anything like that if you do or don't come, and so just give it a try. So that would be like a really small experiment with your intuition that doesn't have a big possible impact. Or trying to think of some other small examples that have happened to me. I've had examples, where you're driving and maybe you forgot the directions or something. You have a vague idea of how to get there and you have a choice between two areas, two roads. Just try to use your gut feeling on it and go with it. My mind will try to rationalize like, maybe no, I'm pretty sure it was that way. No, just like go with your gut feeling. And the worst that can happen is that you drive for 5 minutes and realize that's not the right way and you have to turn around. So that's a small way to challenge or test out your intuition. So some ways to develop intuition are tools. I use tools. So oracle cards, tarot cards have been my tool to develop my intuition. And people, you say, well, tarot cards are telling me to do this or telling me to do that. And I actually think they're tools that we can use to tap into our intuition, because these cards are full of symbolism and colors and maybe some words on them. And it's a way to tap into the intuition where you're focusing on using part of your brain that's not a total rationale, pragmatic part of it. It's a little bit more of the creative part. And when I use like tarot cards or oracle cards, I am trying to kind of disengage that rational thinking and using my other part of the brain. And that other part of the brain also focuses on the feelings that I have in my body and in my spirit, and seeing if I can get any other messages from ancestors or spirits that may be around me that want to help. So it's kind of a meditation experience for me too. So meditation for me is about, again, stopping that mind chatter and just making space for creative ideas to bubble up and for the other part of the brain that's doing a little bit more creativity and symbolism and thinking about the feelings, not just that constant rational, what do you have to do, what's on the to-do list. So tarot cards have been, since I was, I don't know, around 15 maybe, been my tool. And I don't use them as like, oh, the tarot card told me to do this. I just use it as a tool. And sometimes if I use the tarot card, sometimes I just like, this isn't really, I don't understand anything. I'm too logical about this. I can't get out of my way enough to listen to my spiritual side of my brain and just my spirit in general. And so sometimes, it just doesn't work. But there's other times where I feel really tapped in when I'm using tarot, and I feel really really in the groove. It just feels really good, and I really feel like I'm getting a lot out of the session. I also, of my own session, the way I use tarot as well is kind of like, what am I will ask sometimes, what is a lesson or an aspect of the situation that I'm missing? What should I maybe focus on a little bit differently in, right now in my life? And those tarot cards or oracle cards, oracle cards are like inspirational cards. They're not like the traditional tarot cards that have wands and pentacles and things like that. They're a tool for me to think about my situation differently as well, because a lot of these will come with books to help explain what the symbolism is in the card. And if I read those, I can look at my situation differently in maybe an aspect that I hadn't done before. And some of them even come with like journaling questions and prompts so that I can think about the situation different and write it out. So that's, some people say, well, tarot cards, that I'm afraid of them. I'm afraid of the power they have. But really, I think it's just a tool to use. keep track of the cards that you have. I write down many times what cards are coming up and then kind of what comes out from the session, so that I can go back later on and see if I can see which one was more accurate or whatever. So I do write them down sometimes in a journal, and sometimes I don't, because I'm just pulling a card for, just like I said, to see things differently and engage a different part of my being. Another way that I develop intuition is through cloud divination. So again, it's a tool to develop my intuition, so that what you do is kind of try to get into a little bit of a meditative state where I just try to clear my mind, look at the clouds, and see if I can see any shapes in the clouds. And then the shapes that I see, I try to think of what's the symbolism for that? What do I know about the symbolism for that? How does that cloud symbol how do I feel when I look at that? And I started that young, as a teenager, doing that, and it was really helpful for me during times of stress. I responded to things that were happening in my home as a child. I did not respond well to some things that were happening, and I found that certain techniques that I learned really helped me with that stress and stuff. So cloud divination helped me just kind of sorry, I'm listening to my children yell about a Pokemon show they're watching. I don't think you can hear it, but I was just listening to that. So cloud divination helped me to just kind of release things that were going on in my mind and focus on the symbols that I could see in the clouds. And focus on that feeling of what I was seeing. So what happens sometimes when I'm doing that is I'll start to see maybe images that are not really happy. Maybe I'll see something that looks like a gun or a clown or something that I don't really want to see. And what that will tell me is that my mind is a little bit focused on negative things, or it's stressed. So then what I try to do is look at the clouds and re-envision a shape. Try to look at a different part of it and think of a different shape that's a little bit more positive and a little bit more makes me feel good inside. So what that does is helps me focus my brain to be looking for positive things and to be looking for solutions, so that my intuition doesn't go towards always the doom and gloom. Because I do think that just like people's intellect and people who are really smart, they can use it for good and they can use it for negative things that don't suit them well or suit other people well. So when I'm developing my intuition, I'm always thinking about how does this going to help me in a positive way and ripple out around me to be positive as well for my family and for other people who come in contact with me. So that cloud divination can help me focus my thoughts and my spirit to scan my environment for good things, for resources, for helpful things. It's really interesting. So give it a try. It may not, I remember when I first started doing it, it wasn't always working the way I wanted it to, because I was I don't really see anything, or I would see a symbol and I didn't really know how to interpret it anyway. But if the more you do it, the more interesting things that you'll see. And it's just a really interesting tool to develop intuition that way, and to get in touch with your own feelings and to see, where your mind kind of moves to. So I hope that makes sense. I'm talking about really nebulous, vague things that I don't have a chart to show you or a picture or a graph. I'm talking about feelings and intuition and other ways of knowing that are experiential, that you really need to experience for yourself. Okay. All right, so I did on the handout that I sent, I listed a few other tools that people use for developing intuition, connecting with intuition. And then I left a little space for yourself to write down things that help you develop intuition, or maybe things you want to try. So other things that have been used throughout the years, usually people think about these as fortune telling activities, but really they're also tools for just for using your intuition or developing it. So reading any tea leaves that are at the bottom of a teacup. There's people who do palmistry, who read lines on the palm. And to me, in my opinion, it's more about the touch of the palm, the person reading the palm, and feeling the vibration of people's energy around them, their spirit, their aura, whatever you want to call it. What else did I have on there? Palmistry, pendulums. Some people really like the pendulum. All sorts of things. The one thing I do not connect with the Ouija board. I don't do that. I don't touch that. It's not my thing. I don't feel good around it. My intuition says stay away from Ouija board. And that's kind of a whole different level of, I don't even really feel like that's intuition. That's not using intuition. That's trying to get information from spirits, passing by spirits. So that's my quick feeling about Ouija boards. So just remember, you want something that's going to help you develop your own intuition. And so meditation can be really good for that too, just to get your body kind of down to a Zen place where you can actually, listen to what's happening in your mind, your body, and soul. All right. Let me just think about a few other things. I was going to talk about plants and intuition. So as you develop this intuition, then you're going to be surprised at what kind of things you can glean from plants. It's interesting that plants that are found in different parts of the world are used for similar things. Now, whether the peoples around the world a long time ago used their intuition to be able to figure out what those uses of plants were used for, or they knew about the taste sensations in their mouth, or they were just using them and figuring out what they were doing to the body. There could be all of the above. But I do believe there's quite a bit of intuition. And intuition, that gut feeling, is also linked to physical things that are happening in the body too. So I think that our bodies can sense things within plants that are not taste, smell, touch. I think there's molecules that can get into our body that give our body clues as to what they can be used for. And that helps to get that gut feeling. I also believe there's spiritual things going on too. So whatever's happening on that level, I believe there is that communication that's happening with plants. I don't necessarily think they're trying to tell us what to use them for. Like we come around and they say, I want to help that human. I think they have all these things just happening around them. They're exuding chemicals and smells and everything. And then I think that we can tap into that. Do I think that plants single out beings that come across them and communicate? Yes, I do think that as well. I do think that people can dream what plants to use. I think all of the above. Like it all can happen. I've had experiences where I've walked past plants, and as I brush up against them, I feel a really hot sensation. And what I was told by another herbalist, more of a healer, I think she would call herself more of a healer, and she said that's the plant's way to say stop and look at me. Stop, look at me and learn from me. So it doesn't happen very often, but it's almost like a really hot stinging, not even stinging, it's almost like a hot poker is on the ends of them, and I just brush up against it. So usually I'll just step back and look at the plant and be like, okay, I'm here, I acknowledge you, I see you, and try to communicate, get some sort of message from them. And there's other times, here's another way intuition in plants works for me. There are other times when I suddenly just see the same plant over and over. It's like I look out my window when I'm driving, I go to a friend's house, it's like the plant is everywhere. I mean, physically it's there. Other people can see it just like I do, but for some reason it's almost like it's just light is throbbing around it, and it's constantly like, here I am, here, look at me. And so when that happens, then I say, okay, I'm going to take note of that and figure out what that plant is used for, or just, think of what I know about what that plant's used for, and then take note of it. And for example, one of the examples I have is one year I noticed that there was a lot of motherwort. Like, I have motherwort in my yard all the time. It's everywhere. It reseeds itself. It's almost a weed in terms of like it's growing in places I can't let it grow anymore, else I won't have any other plants. But one year it just really was popping out to me. I'm just like, wow, this motherwort just seems to be glowing everywhere. And motherwort is for mothers, especially new mothers. It is also, it helps with anxiety, can help a little bit with blood pressure. It's an emmenagogue, which means it can bring on menses if you need your menses to come on. You don't want to take it when you're pregnant. It's for after the baby comes, to help kind of calm things down. And I knew that motherwort wasn't like a plant for me. When I take it, I get a little bit of a low blood pressure feel. I get ringing in the ears. It's not for me. It's not for people who have low blood pressure, or maybe on the lower spectrum of the normal, in my experience. So I was like, okay, this plant isn't for me. So what does this mean? And I thought, well, maybe there's a lot of expecting mothers coming up. And then when I thought about all my friends and family, I was like, no, nobody's pregnant. I don't, nobody's pregnant. Well, lo and behold, within like the next month, there's just people were pregnant all over the place. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So that's an example of how plant and intuition kind of can play that way. It's just interesting. I mean, I didn't pick the plants for the people that were pregnant. I didn't go to them and say they had to use motherwort. It was just one of those messages that, like, I picked up, kind of like I said, on that spectrum of intuition where you're picking it up. It's really like you're having intuition, but you're like, I don't even know what that means, or why would I get that information? That's kind of what it was like that time. Like, what is this information going to do for me? And for me, those little tiny bits of information, or what feels like useless information, with things I can't do with it. Sometimes I have dreams of things that are going to happen, bad things that are going to happen, and I can't do anything about it. But to me, it's just like getting those little blips of intuition. And if you don't even acknowledge them, or you just think, well, this is not useful, what's the point of that? If you just do that, then you're pushing the intuition away. So just acknowledge, like, oh, that was interesting. Oh, that dream was interesting. It seemed to correlate with this, and it just seems to increase. That's another one. Keep track of your dreams. If you don't dream, there are some herbs that help with that. Mugwort is one of them. You can put it under your pillow, in a dream pillow, keep it nearby, grow it, hold it in your hand, meditate with it, those kinds of things. There's all sorts of other herbs out there that help with sleep and things like that. So yeah, dreaming is a good way to connect with intuition too. And I've dreamt about plants before too. So that's examples of how intuition can come through. I gave you some tools to deal with to develop intuition, talked about plants and intuition, and I think it's an integral part of a priestessness is the intuition, because you need that. That's your information gateway in some ways, for the unseen and the seen, for different ways of knowing, for non-verbal communication things. When you start to work with people, if you ever start to work with people on an herbalism level, you'll need to be able to have some intuition and be able to read, all sorts of different things, energies going on in the room. Or if you ever teach, it's really good to be able to read a room and use the intuition. And if you're just using herbs for yourself, or being a priestess for yourself and your family, intuition is great for the family situation too, and yourself. Okay, so tomorrow is learning herbs part 1. So we'll start to get into, like plants, and really get close to the plant part of the plant priestess. And let's see, tomorrow's Sunday. And Monday, we'll also be doing part 2 of a learning herbs. So this is day 2. I hope you enjoyed something that I said today. And excuse me. And yeah, let me know what you got out of this chat. what your experiences are and things like that. So have a good night or day wherever you are in the world. If you're watching the replay, let us know that you watched. So thank you for tuning in.